برنامه نانگال سرخ رو نگاه میکنید، مجله اجتماعی سیاسی که به زبانهای انگلیسی و فارسی روی کانال جدید پخش میشه. سلام به همگی، من مریم نمازی ام
و من فریبرز پویا هستم. در برنامه این هفته مصاحبه‌ای داریم با نورا مالردی از فعالین چپ حزب کارگر در انگلیس.
چندی پیش مصاحبه‌ای داشتم با نورا مالردی، یکی از فعالین چپ حزب کارگر انگلیس. بشینیم با هم صحبتاشو در رابطه با این چپی که ضد امپریالیسته و طرفدار اسلام سیاسی و ضد غرب رو با هم ببینیم. با ما باشید. Thank you, Nora, for joining us. I wanted to ask you about a large section of the left in Britain, in Europe. It seems very much so that this has become a left that has turned its back on traditional left values, internationalism, women's equality, and so on and so forth. Why do you think we've come to a place where this is so?
I mean, that's obviously a big question. I think from what I can kind of see, if you look, it was born out of some of the great campaigns for liberation from the 60s, in Britain, across Europe and America, which were, championing, anti-racism, protection of minorities, all of those things that were absolutely right and really, really good. But as the years have gone by, it's kind of morphed from being about the protection of people from minorities into the protection of cultures, so things that the original left might have said, well, actually, we're not sure we support that type of practice or whatever, which then went a step further and became the protection of almost political ideologies that were espoused by people who kind of wore a protective shield of being from a minority. And I guess the most obvious example of that is Islamism and the relationship between the left and Islamism today, which is, they're weirdly connected, and that's a real shame. But I think it's that journey where it was a good thing, and then it just over the years became distorted, and now it's barely recognizable.
So I mean, it's so contradictory to have a left supporting Islamism, which is a far-right movement. How can that be explained as something progressive beyond what you've said? How can people sort of accept that in their daily politics?
I think at the heart of it is cultural relativism. I think that is the only conceivable explanation for it. That the idea of something being part of someone's culture is a more important thing to kind of protect than it being wrong. And so the kind of the left-wing instinct to protect is just misdirected, So, I mean, we've had maybe 20, maybe 30 years of like university students, left-wing students who, as I say, it started from a really good place of the liberation campaigns. But over the years, with each new intake of university students, there's another kind of mini generation of the left that's being totally immersed in this idea that it's their culture is more important than it's wrong. And over time, it's actually become almost part of the DNA of the left. These are people who, yes, they may have come to this when they were 18, 19, but they're now in their 30s, 40s, even 50s. And it strikes me that it's going to be incredibly hard to turn the left in a new direction or in an old direction, because it's so deeply ingrained now. It's a profound change in the psychology of the left.
Isn't it worrying, especially now with Jeremy Corbyn as head of the Labour Party, Seamus Milner, for example, having a key role? It seems that this is becoming more mainstream. Is that possible?
Well, I think it might be more mainstream, hopefully temporarily, within the Labour Party. I don't think it's becoming more mainstream within the country. I think what we're seeing at the moment is a fringe element of the left has basically hijacked the Labour Party at the moment. You know, and groups that had virtually no support across the country, you know, even in the last set of elections, have now basically kind of the doors have been opened up to them, unfortunately, by Jeremy Corbyn's leadership success. You know, and now they're doing everything they can to try and kind of use the Labour Party as the vehicle for their kind of politics. But there is a huge backlash within the Labour Party, and actually, I think within Labour supporting communities across the country against that kind of politics. And I'm not sure it's going to kind of sustain over the long term, but it is going to be hard to challenge it. It is going to be hard to challenge it.
And the thing is, I guess there's a contradiction, because a lot of people feel that they want to support many of Jeremy Corbyn's good policies against austerity and defence of refugee rights. And on the other hand, there's this thing, you know, this relationship with Islamism as well, that seems to be contradictory. I mean, you can't be anti-fascist just some of the time, you know. How can one address this? Because some will say, well, the relations with Islamists is only a small part of the bigger picture. Would you agree with that?
Well, except that it seems to be born out of a kind of global analysis that everything wrong that happens in the world is the fault of the West. And it's a kind of, you know, and obviously, like, you know, international relations and world affairs and history is very complicated, and there's an awful lot of things that intertwine, and you could never say, well, actually, if that didn't happen, none of the rest of this stuff would happen, or if only we'd done that, you know, there would be a different outcome. It's complicated, everything's complicated. But they seem to have they come to one conclusion. Everything has, all roads lead to, you know, the West is to blame. So it's not just about Islamism, it's actually something far more fundamental in that aspect of the left's worldview. So I don't think it is a small thing. I think it's a symptom of something very fundamental to the entire of their politics. So I think people will kind of tolerate it, actually. I mean, we certainly won't be elected to government anytime soon with these politics. So even if people within the Labour Party might kind of tolerate it for a bit longer, because we have no choice at the moment.
امیدوارم از مصاحبه که با نورا داشتیم خوشتون اومده باشه. برای منی که چپم، کمونیستم، خب واقعا اعصابم خورد شده از این بخشی از چپ که واقعا چپ عقب مونده، که طرفدار اسلام سیاسی، طرفدار نسبیت فرهنگی و همه پرنسیپایی که همیشه چپ پرچمدارش بوده، از برابری طلبی، از آزادی خواهی، اینا رو مثل که یادشون رفته. فقط چیزی که یادشون مونده اینه که باید برن طرفدار اسلام سیاسی.
اینا رو ما تو ایران داریم و تجربه کردیم. اینا رو همیشه هم پشت سر یک آخوند قرار میگیرن. و جالب صداهای مثل نورا مولردی و کسایی که خیلی زیاد شدن اخیراً داره بلند میشه در اعتراض به این قضیه. توی 4-5 سال گذشته اعتراض به ائتلاف این جرد چپ با اسلامیایی توی اروپا در واقع اعتراض زیاد شده و توی حزب کارگر هم هست. و حزب کارگر اهمیتش اینه که الان رهبر جدید حزب کارگر جرمی کوربین با اینکه روی موج اعتراض مردم به علیه ریاست اقتصادی رهبری حزب کارگر
اعتراضات برحق
دقیقاً رهبری حزب کارگر گرفته، در سایه این جنات عقب مونده مثل شیم اسمیل که هوادار جنات جمهوری اسلامی هستن، هوادار
جمهوری اسلامی دقیقاً مستقیما دفاع کردن،
اینا تلاش کردن زیر اون پرچم قرار بگیرن و صدای مثل نورا خیلی مهمه.
دقیقاً. و خب یه چیزی که میبینیم اینه که بعضیا فکر میکنن خب این طرفداریشون از اسلام سیاسی یه بخش خیلی کوچیکی از مسئله است، ولی به نظرم نورا خوب توضیح داد که این اصلا اصل مطلب همینه، اینه که اینا ضد غربن، ضد امپریالیستن و فقط ضد امپریالیستی که همیشه میره بغل جنبش اسلام سیاسی میست.